So I've seen interviews on Johnny Fisher signing to Zuffa, and I think there's some interesting observations to be made. So let's try and bring some understanding and additional context. So we're going to unpack 7 statements. So the first statement is that the real asset here isn't Fisher. So the real asset isn't Fisher. It's the Romford Bull Army. So Dana White has effectively signed a cultural movement, not just a heavyweight prospect. And this is interesting because the value of Johnny is not just what he does in the ring, it's that he has a following. So it's not what he's doing in the ring, it's more about what he's doing outside of the ring. His dad is also part of his marketing. So it's not just about Johnny Fisher the boxer, it's also about Johnny Fisher and his family. And this clearly resonates with the British people. There is a strong British brand. And also Johnny Fisher, the way he presents himself is very likable. He doesn't present himself as egotistical or arrogant. He comes across very down to earth. And that resonates with British culture. So again, the real asset is the cultural movement that Johnny Fisher is creating. Such an important point. And then the second point is about the Matchroom Split. And I think there's a lot going on here because there's talk that the Fisher parting ways with Eddie is amicable. And there's even been the term as they're still friends. And of course, this could be truth or this could be PR. But I think what's objectively quite true is that Fisher had a really bad defeat to Dave Allen in the rematch. And it looks like to me that Matchroom is a very strong machine. But maybe they felt that they could not rebuild Johnny Fisher after such a devastating defeat. On top of that, because the context here may be multifaceted, they may have saw the rebuilding process as being difficult, but also they couldn't match the Zuffa offer. So the economic value that Zuffa sees in Johnny Fisher is not matched by Matchroom. And then the third statement is that I believe that the next fight will be at the Copper Box, and this is seen as like a strategic stepping stone. And the reason for this is that the Copper Box, it's a smaller arena. In a sense, it's an intimate venue, maximum atmosphere. And because it's a smaller arena, it's a guaranteed sellout. So the intimacy, the British branding, this is clearly, or this would appear to be, a marketing move. And as Zuffa is, it's entered boxing, it's developing its boxing brand, but from the British boxing perspective, it's starting small and then progressing to the bigger stage. And let's be clear, when we look at Johnny Fisher, there's Johnny Fisher the boxer, there's Johnny Fisher the brand, there's Johnny Fisher the cultural movement. But when we look at Johnny Fisher the boxer, there is a clear rebuilding process that's being undertaken. And that should not be rushed, because if it is rushed, the risks of defeat become exponentially bigger. And then the next statement is about the coach, Tony Sims, which is a coaching upgrade. And this is important because Tony Sims has a wealth of experience. He has trained Eddie Hearn and Dillian White, and I believe he's currently training Conor Benn. The important question here is, will the Tony Sims boxing philosophy, will it help Johnny Fisher? I say this respectively about Johnny Fisher. Again, he seems to be a really nice guy. But I think objectively, he needs to improve his adaptability in the ring. The Dave Allen fight in the rematch showed that he doesn't yet have the boxing IQ to compete at a certain level. For example, he needs to be able to control the distance with the jab. He was unable to do that against Dave Allen. He needs to be able to hold strategically, and he needs to be able to control the tempo, and ultimately he needs to improve his game. And I guess one of the roles of Tony Sims is to build that boxing knowledge, to build that boxing education. And then the next statement is the British title timeline. And I think there's been discussion that the Lonsdale belt will be his next target. And that puts him on a collision course with other British heavyweights. To me, there's an important underlying theme here, or there's a question. What is Johnny Fisher's level? Is he British level? Is he potentially world level? Judging on the Dave Allen performance, you couldn't really make an argument that he's world level, but things can change. And it's important to recognize that even if Johnny Fisher is British level, which is still a high level, objectively, he could still generate significant impact because you can have those British rivalries. But I don't think his level has been determined yet. But I think what we know is that Johnny Fisher has the following. He has the cultural impact, but does he have the ability to be able to really go to the level that will enable him to make a significant amount of money? And then the next statement is about, can Dana White replicate UFC's cultural formula in the UK? Now, Nick Khan, and Nick Khan is essential here, and Dana White are betting that Zuffa's storytelling machine works in boxing, and this is Nick Khan's expertise. But what story needs to be told to build Johnny further? What is that story? And then the bigger philosophical question is the story more important than the talent and the ability? Because even if you have a great story, we still need to have the results in the ring. So in the case of Johnny Fisher, we need the ring performances, but also we need to continue to develop that story. And like I said, he has a strong story. He has a community. And then this leads to the final statement, and that's the Johnny 2.0 framing. Chapter 2 begins. And this is what we can call the narrative reset. New promoter, new trainer, new arena, but same army. Fisher, as we've stated, has a community. He has a strong brand. He is seen as authentic. The new trainer is essential for what happens in the ring, and the promoter is essential for what happens outside the ring. And the army, they build the movement, and that's important. But the army, they can't do the fighting. Johnny Fisher is solely responsible for what happens in the ring, and his team are massively responsible for what happens outside of the ring. So here is my final statement. Think of this. Dana White may have signed Johnny Fisher, but he also required something more valuable, a loyal community that already believes in the product. That creates opportunity, but it also creates expectation. Marketing can fill arenas, stories can build excitement, and personalities can attract attention. But boxing always returns to one question. Can you win when it matters? Johnny's next chapter will not be defined by promotion alone. It will be defined by his development, his performances, and his ability to justify the belief behind the movement. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community, and that means I'm interested in your thoughts, I'm interested in your perspectives, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, press like, hype, and subscribe. And if you want to watch more content like this, then simply click here or click here. As always, thanks for your time. It is much appreciated.